Welcome to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am Dr. Christopher Holmes, host for this episode and member of the Black Doctoral Network. Today, I am joined by Dr. Doraine Baul-Pinson, who is a professor, mental health practitioner, and clinical advisor. I am so excited to have this extraordinary woman and scholar, and we are going to get down to the conversation today. Welcome, Dr. Baul-Pinson.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Listen, we don't have any time to waste, so we're going to jump right in and get started. Will you please tell our viewers and our listeners, where does it all begin for you?
For me, in terms of getting into academia and also mental health, it was seeing people where they would seem to have a problem and you would think, why can't they change course? And I would see this and I thought, what is keeping people from, just changing course? Why are they so angry? Why are they not getting out of bed? These types of things. So I guess it was more curiosity. And I was really fascinated with some of the mental health disorders like schizophrenia, where there's hallucinations and delusions. So I guess I wanted to know more about that. And as I did that, I wanted to work in the field.
So what age was that? So what was the first time you remember saying, what is that? What am I looking at? And why don't I understand this? Because it's not, in a sense, normal.
Well, both my parents are from Savannah, Georgia.
Woohoo!
And really?
Oh, Georgia.
Yeah. So they're both only children. And my mother had an aunt, Aunt Cornelia, and sometimes she would get upset and she would get angry and she would do odd things. And they would kind of say some of the typical things you might say about somebody. Her head ain't right, or, those kinds of things. So, but Aunt Cornelia, she would be really sweet one minute and then she would be very angry the next. So I was really, I guess, curious about why is that and why do they kind of put her in this category? And then as, I got older, at that time I was around 7. As I got older, I started to see that in other people. And then my great-grandmother, she had said, that was actually that same summer, she said, how old are you? And I said, I'm 7. And she told me, well, when my mother was 7 years old, she was freed. And so then I got fascinated with that. And because I kept thinking, boy, if this is my great grandmother and her mother was freed at 7. So, but she was Grandma Sudi and she kind of had some mood issues. So I kind of started to see it in my own family, was curious about some of that, and then as time went on, I just started seeing it in other people. And, so I just wanted to know more about how people's brains work, I guess.
And that's interesting that you say that, because I think I was about 3, maybe 4, in church. And there was a woman that would walk into the church mid-service. I mean, the preacher was getting ready to preach, and she would walk in and literally just come and stand in the middle of the altar. Makeup was like all over the place, like lipstick on her cheeks, and everything was just out of order, right? But nobody ever explained to us who are children that she had a mental disorder. They would just say she was a little different, or she was touched, or, things like that. We didn't know what that meant, but we also knew it wasn't something that everybody else did. But of course, at that time, nobody went and saw mental health counseling or saw a psychiatrist. So it's funny, here I am talking to a beautiful Black woman that's now in the field of mental health, when 30, 40 years ago, there was probably very few of us even doing this work. So I'm so happy to see you doing this, because we need you in our community.
Yes, and that was another thing. There's a lot of resistance, especially in the Black community with regard to mental health.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge. Here in Omaha, we have several Black therapists, and we coordinate together and work on projects together. We try to look at doing psychoeducation workshops, that type of thing. The problem, the pandemic kind of put a put a fire in that for now.
Yeah, put a halt on many things.
Yeah.
So in this work, what have been some of the joys you've experienced doing mental health work?
Well, I think the biggest thing is people share their lives with you. I
Mm,
mean, their whole lives, their struggles, problems with their families, the good and the bad, but just the fact that someone's sharing that with you and giving you the opportunity to help them live their best life possible.
yeah,
That's how I see it. So I always try to throw in a life coach kind of thing along with the mental health
yeah.
strategies.
So you have these highs, but I'm sure there are also some lows.
Yeah, this is a difficult field. In fact, in 2008-ish or so, I was kind of getting burned out. I was seeing like 35 clients a week. It was very stressful. So I did take off for 5 years and travel the world working with military families,
Oh,
where
wow.
I just kind of did lightweight, non-medical. But after 5 years, I kind of got bored with the lightweight and kind of missed the clinical, but I did need that 5-year break.
I'm glad you said light work with the military, because I have both of my brothers who are both retired military, and oh my God, just the things they experience and have seen. I know that you could have gone heavy with that if you wanted to.
Yeah, because actually what I would do is just kind of refer them to the mental health part, but I would work with them on family dynamics. We put on events so the military would know, members would know we were there for them and their families. We went to all kinds of things. They could meet us anywhere, so people would know they were actually meeting with the counselor. And it was more lightweight, but I still feel important work. And I think if people need more mental health, later, I think it kind of set the stage for them to become more comfortable,
Yeah.
working with the counselor later if they needed to.
So I want to ask a question, then it's going to pivot into another conversation. So here's the initial question. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between mental health and mental illness?
Oh, that's a great question. We all have mental health. We all need to take care of ourselves. We all need to, and we might neglect that. So our emotional wellness is very important. Right now, I'm teaching a class I've been teaching for 6 years on wellness, and emotional wellness is just one dimension of 8. But so we all have a mental health. We all need to take care of it with things like meditation, exercise, those kinds of things. Mental illness is more of something that may be debilitating or stopping a person from doing something. Like, I'll give an example of depression. Some of my depressed clients are diagnosed with depression. Some of them have trouble just making an appointment with me. So that could be a golden therapy, just being able to show up at the office.
Wow.
Cleaning up. The field is looking at making hoarding its own disorder. Right now, it's kind of under the OCD disorder, but hoarding in and of itself is it's a whole nother thing. And a lot of that is due to losing people or things in our lives and wanting to hold on to things. So with a mental health illness, there's things that stop you from doing things like, say, anxiety. You might not be able to shop at a grocery store or go to a Walmart or a concert. So it's something that will stop or usually hinder a person from doing things that maybe somebody not diagnosed with that would have no problem doing. So that's kind of the difference.
And I'm glad that you mentioned both depression and anxiety, because I think oftentimes we don't take those to be severe mental illnesses. But you just said it. These are things that are debilitating for people. The extreme side of fear, like anxiety, stops you from doing normal activity. And my next side of the question is, how many more times now are you seeing children show up in your office as it relates to just things like depression, as I think about social media and the pressures of trying to meet a body goal or an image, and then anxiety because there's a lot of pressure being placed on them. And as a former educator, I used to see kids, I had never seen this before, kids have like test anxiety, full on panic attacks. And I was like, what in the world is happening? So talk a little bit about that. Are you seeing more children?
Yes, I do. And I do like that people are bringing children in younger than maybe they may have before. But yes, for a while I worked on an after school program doing social emotional intelligence with students where we could talk about identify emotions. Kids young don't understand their emotions. One thing that was really helpful when I was doing that was that movie Inside Out, a Disney movie. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it did help kids understand how we have a bunch of different emotions and how they can make us react. And there's a lot of bullying with social media. I would really hate to be a kid today trying to grow up with all this technology and all this information available. And so a lot of the anxiety and even depression with young children, I think a lot of it comes from being so accessible to their peers, and their peers can be cruel sometimes. So, and then, like you said, body image is another big thing for young girls, where they feel like they need to look a certain way or things like that. So a lot of the work is esteem building type things, understanding what the symptoms are that they're experiencing, because they may be experiencing both anxiety and depression, so understanding how this all works. And a lot of times aids such as Inside Out are very helpful with children, because you can kind of, give them a way to understand what they're feeling. A lot of anger too. I see a lot of anger with young people. A lot of them do not want to disrespecting authority. Those are some of the biggies that come up in my office.
Oh, most definitely. What is something you think just the common layperson should know as it relates to mental health or mental illness that is likely not common knowledge?
I think the biggest thing is that I think there might be a perception that people who have a mental health disorder are not intelligent, but I would wager to say they may be some of the most intelligent people you meet. And I think a big reason is that they have to deal with it. If they can't shop somewhere, they find ways around it. And they might be thinking, especially somebody who's nervous about going out, they might go, I've had clients who'll go out at 2 a.m. and shop. If things are, like go to Walmart, some of those 24-hour they will spend that time to plan to get the things they need to do. Now we have online shopping a lot more prevalent, so some of my clients will do that. But I think they are very intelligent because they're very aware of the symptoms that they're experiencing.
It's funny that you say that. You're causing me to reflect. And so I have a family member. We would always say he's just not very social, right? Doesn't interact well with people, can be a bit of a recluse, does not really go out much, but he's very, very smart, very smart. I mean, multiple degrees. And I think because the world has changed so much, it has created space for him to still be smart and active, but he doesn't have to go out. He shops from home. He works from home. Everything he does from inside of his space, he does not have to go out and interact with people in any type of way. Now, once again, this is something that's for us undiagnosed. We have no clue what the issue is, but we know there is an issue. But he's been very creative to find ways to navigate through and still be successful in life as a person. And so I think there's somebody else out there who's like me. They've got somebody who has barriers, so to speak, but has, as you would say, has been creative or have been creative to find ways to still do what they need to do, because it's not an intellectual issue, it's a mental issue.
Yeah, there's a diagnosis called agoraphobia. Now, I don't know if this is the case for your example, but I keep saying with this technology, this is a world for people who have agoraphobia, because people with agoraphobia do not like to go out. They will not go out. They'll do all these things like you described him doing. So that's kind of some of the things I worry about, because it is set up to where now, or before you couldn't, before this technology, you could literally do everything from home. I've been doing a lot from home with the pandemic. I'm doing more our field now. We can do telehealth now. We couldn't before the pandemic. So, but everything is set up to where if you don't need to go out, you can just stay in and still, make a living, eat, and do all those basic daily living activities. So I wonder how that'll work out as the future, as time goes on, because the social aspect is very important for us.
Yeah. And I'm sure for you, you also want to encourage people that say have agoraphobia to get out, to try to get out, to challenge them not to be stuck in that space, because it doesn't help them to continue to be locked away. They need to try to interact. And so, as you would say, probably you would set goals for them, correct, in terms of how to get out.
Yeah, one of my first cases was a person with agoraphobia, and that person was scared to go out. So we started out with just standing on the porch for 5 minutes, and we did what we call exposure therapy. She had a car. It took us like 3 weeks to go and stand by the car. It took about 8 months, but the last thing we did was I was going to ride with her to the grocery store because she was having her groceries delivered. And this was really actually before all this technology made it even easier. And shop. And I went with her. I was kind of scared when she was driving because she hadn't driven in years. And I was like, what did I do with this idea? But we got there and she shopped, and but it took a long time. It was just gentle exposure. Yeah. And and I think she was ready to do it. I think the client has to be ready to do it, but isolation can also be dangerous too, because no one knows how you're doing or what you need, and so I think that's kind of some of the concerns with agoraphobia or people who kind of isolate. You see that with people who are diagnosed with depression too, and definitely anxiety. Mm-hmm. Some people have social phobia.
And I think you just used a key word, and this is for what you do, but anybody dealing with somebody with a mental health or a mental issue, is we have to be gentle. We can't be too pushy or too aggressive with them, because it could just tip people over the edge. So just a note to everybody out there watching and listening, be gentle. Be gentle. Take your time, and because you want to make sure that they're comfortable. So yeah, thank you for that. So I'm going to move to the next question, because you wear many hats, right? So that's just one of the hats. The other hat, you are a clinical supervisor. Talk about that work.
Okay, well, that I really like that, because I'm in private practice. So I'll either get college interns who need to do their practicum, or I'll get other therapists. And since I can diagnose, a lot of times I'm diagnosing their clients for them, and I'm working with them on their caseloads. Like if they're struggling with a client, or a client isn't making progress, we'll kind of try to bat through a treatment plan and what might help this client, improve. So as a clinical supervisor, I'm getting met with other things. I think the other thing is being in private practice is you not only have to think about your client load and your caseload and your treatment plan, but you also have to think about the business side. You have to figure out how you're going to get paid. You got to figure out all of those practical business things. Because I always said, boy, I had to struggle learning this. So I kind of wish the field would put in a kind of business model or courses. And I know there's so many courses already for so many of this career, but where people could learn, because a lot of my teaching with therapists is how to get your billing in, how, you know, what can you use for that? Getting an office, making sure that you're professional in terms of being on time for clients, you know, those types, they're basic things, but they're very important for your image in the field.
Yeah. Those are super important though. Like you said, those are, I don't want to say soft skills, but those are things that have nothing directly to do with what you do with your clients. But if you don't do them, you may not be in business long.
That's true. So you really, you are definitely, you said I'm wearing hats, but just in private practice, there's two hats there, because there's that business side, because you got to eat. And then there's the fundamentals of the work itself.
Now let's talk about another hat that you wear, and that is the hat of professor. Tell us about that work and how and why you do that.
Well, that is why I went ahead to get the PhD. And two, like I said, I had gotten burned out. The mental health field can be very difficult and stressful. You have clients with difficult situations. So I wanted to do other things. So doing that, and my bachelor's is in journalism, which proved to be a good degree to have with all this writing. So getting into that, teaching new people and being able to bring the real life with the scholar for people to kind of see what it is in real time and what it's like working with clients, how to show empathy to clients, how to, you know, what are their options in terms of what they can do with the field, because you can do pretty much anything. You can work in shelters if you want to. You can work with battered, well, more women are battered. You know, you can work with children. You can really develop the field and do the things that you're interested in. So for me, being the professor, also I'm exposed to how the field's changing a lot with the new material. So I love that. The field has changed. I've been in this field for 20 years. So to see the changes, like more emphasis on multicultural aspects, LGBTQ aspects, I love that the field is trying to really address those things in a real way and looking at the whole person, client-centered. So I try to express that to students.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, for these students now coming into this work, we have never seen this amount of accepted diversity. And you just mentioned so many of those things: multicultural, LGBTQIA+. I mean, it's as we accept people for who they are and how they identify in the world, but many times doing that causes stress for people because they're not normal, right? And so they're trying to work in spaces, live in spaces, go to school in spaces where they need to first value who they are when they enter the space, and then how do you deal with people who may not value you, or the perception is that you're not being valued. And so that can cause the anxiety, the depression, all those things. And so, yeah, like you said, it's changing. I am excited for you guys because one, it keeps you working. It keeps you working, but it changes our viewpoint and our skill level to help people in so many different ways.
But that's a challenge. I can say that.
Yeah.
At a couple of the universities, I do social justice or diversity classes, and there is a lot of pushback from a lot of my white students. And so I'm still trying to find ways to maneuver some of that where people don't feel certain ways. And I think some of the political atmosphere kind of hurts that and kind of takes away what you're trying to do. You're trying to bring an inclusive aspect to it, to the field that's very needed, because sometimes you might get that person that's not like you, and you want them to trust you, the client professional relationship. It depends on you. You set that tone. And if you can't relate to this young Black boy who comes to tell you that they're getting called the N-word on a regular basis, what are you going to say to that person? So, but I will say at the end of those courses, even though there's a lot of resistance, I think the awareness is heightened. And I think it's just a challenge, because we've got to shift our norms. I think there's a paradigm shift, and there's some resistance to it, maybe. I don't know.
I'm only sure. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because we talk about equity also in healthcare, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you have students, they have to understand what their biases are. And like you said, if I am a young white woman and I have a biases around, or several biases around Black people in general, when that young Black man comes into me and he says somebody called him the N-word, and I am not somebody, I may use that word in my everyday life when I'm not working, right? Mm-hmm. You have to be professional enough and responsible to say, I don't think I'm the person that you need to see, and recommend or refer him to go to somebody else. Because can I really provide you the adequate care that you need with something that's bothering you or creating you stress? And I also do that same thing to other people that look like you?
Yeah, that's a good point. And a lot of times students come in and they say, I want to work with marginalized communities. I mean, they'll say that. So you say, okay, well then you need to get cultural competence.
Yes.
And you need cultural humility, which means that you're trying to relate to them. You're trying to learn as much as you can. So a lot of the literature now in the field that I'm teaching, which is a good thing, is saying, hey, look at it from their view. Take, radical empathy, and try to put yourself in that person's shoes. And I think it's a little bit more difficult for white people to do, just because they don't deal with those microaggressions on a day-to-day.
Yeah.
And they can become a bit defensive. But I do see, like I said, I do see growth at the end of the class. I do see that people understand things or feel more connected at the end of the class. So I think it's just going to be a rough road with that.
And that's okay. Life's a journey.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. So let's say there's somebody watching and they're inspired by you. What piece of advice would you give to this young man or this young woman that wants to do the work that you do?
One is, there's a lot of need out there, and pretty much any interest that you have, it could be substance abuse, it could be children, it could be any population. There's a need in almost all of them. We are not immune from that, no matter what walk of life it is. So the inspiration is, get the skills, learn about the field, stay up on all the new stuff with the field, and also think about the population that you feel like you can best benefit or that you'd like to work with.
Yeah, I love that. So today, what's your biggest accomplishment?
I would say it actually happened during the pandemic, because I graduated with my PhD in 2012, and I perished big time. Big time. So I was working, I was traveling the world. I was doing all those kinds of things. And so I wasn't like in one place where I could just try to start working. And so I said, well, I need to blow the dust off that journalism degree. And so I had been thinking of this concept for several years, because I've been reading things like Dr. Joy DeGruy with her post-traumatic slave syndrome. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Carol Anderson. And so I was trying to figure out a way that would fit my field of mental health with something that would help my community. And my dissertation was on child welfare, so attachment theory was huge. It was, huge in that, the importance of the parent-child bond. But I started thinking about how we always refer to Africa as the motherland. And so I thought motherland is like a parent. And so anyway, I came up with this concept of nation attachment. And there actually is a thing where you look at your country as your parent, and you connect to your country in that way. So what I did is expanded on attachment theory, and I wrote an article on it where I was looking at the Black-White dyad in particular, where you look at Africans coming through the Middle Passage to the United States, and they meet all the criteria of not being able to bond with their country because of that, because they were property. So I've been working on that. I'm starting to do an outline on the book. Black Doctoral Network was the first to allow me to present last year. Awesome. And when I saw people were interested in the idea, I presented it in, variations to one of the universities I teach at. And then I presented it again at the APA conference that was in August, American Psychological Association. So it seems like people are kind of receptive to it. So I thought, well, I'm going to do a book. And one of the universities I teach at is giving me the opportunity to teach a 4-part workshop on it. And it merges my passion for wanting to educate my community on mental health and psychology and some of the issues and the trauma and the intergenerational trauma. It's all of that. So that's kind of, I would say, my biggest accomplishment at this old age now.
No old age. What are you talking about? Get out of here.
It's been really exciting, the response I've gotten to that. So.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Yeah, you just keep us informed on that, because I definitely want to hear more about it. I may need to come and attend one of those workshops or also.
So yeah, I'm really excited about that.
So what has been probably one of your biggest challenges that you faced?
Well, time. I probably wouldn't have done that project if the pandemic didn't happen, because I didn't have to drive back and forth to the office. And I was able, I was able to take, work on other things that you always, how you'll have those projects and I'll get to it. So I would say time in the field itself. Some clients aren't ready for therapy. Sometimes they're never ready for therapy. And for some people, it's a radical idea. So those are challenges. And then the trust between the mental health therapist and the client is so important. There's so much research that says successful counseling outcomes are usually because of the alliance of the therapist and the client. If they have a good alliance, a trusting alliance, then they're more apt to see successful outcomes.
Like you in that car going to the grocery store, there had to be a trusting alliance there.
Oh, it was big time. You just don't know.
Well, I've got one last question for you, and that is, how has your affiliation with the Black Doctoral Network enhanced your career?
Well, actually, I was in Korea doing my break from the field, and I was like, okay, I'm going to start applying for professor jobs and academia, and so I was like, I wonder if there's any kind of thing, for Black PhDs. And I looked and I found the network, so I joined while I was over there. I did get to go to one conference when I got back stateside, and they've just been really helpful. Like I said, they were the first ones to accept my proposal, which I believe gave me the confidence to go to other, other venues and say, hey, are you interested in me presenting this? And fortunately, everybody that I presented to wanted me to do it. So I think they give confidence, they give you resources. This podcast, and I think they give wonderful support. So I'm a huge fan.
The thing about us, a lot of people are excited to be a part of the network, but we are also so excited to have special people like you who are members of the Black Doctoral Network, because you do extraordinary work and your contribution to the community makes a tremendous difference. So thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for being a member of BDN. We really appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk to me. You didn't have to, but you did. And I really, really do appreciate it, Dr. Baul-Pinson. It's been a pleasure. Will you please take a little bit of time and tell our viewers and our listeners where they can go to learn more about you and the work that you do?
I do have a website. It's kind of rusty, but I've been trying to work on it. It's Baul-Pinson.com. So I can put it in and send it to you, but you can reach me there. I'm still scared of social media to some extent, and I'm also on LinkedIn. So hopefully I'll see some of you there, or if you have questions or want to connect with me, I'd be more than happy to. I'm really honored for this opportunity, and just really flattered that I was able to do this.
Well, you guys have it. We're going to make sure that we put all of her information in the description for you. So follow her on LinkedIn and then go and check out her website. If you need some mental health, you have a couple of questions, reach out to her, connect with her, and I promise you, you will be provided with the resources and supports that you need. And while you're following her, also follow the Black Doctoral Network on all of our social media channels, because we want to connect with you as well. Thank you for joining us today for the Black Doctors Talk podcast. It has been a tremendous honor to talk about mental health, an important issue in America and especially in the community today. We hope you will join us again next time. But for now, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and don't forget, go and tell one of your friends, tell your auntie, your cousin, your daddy, your pastor, and your preacher, because we want to be connected with you as well. Until next time, we'll see you. Be blessed. Thank you, Dr. Baul-Pinson, for joining me today.